"She is one of us now," the president whispered. He was standing in the main hall of the Hells Angels clubhouse in Sacramento, California, and every eye in the room was trained on him. "She is one of us now, and nobody here is going to say otherwise. Do you understand me?" The silence that followed was not the silence of agreement. It was the silence of understanding. It was the silence of men comprehending that something had shifted. That a rule that had existed forever, no women in the club, women were property or support. Women did not belong in the sacred space of the clubhouse. That rule had just been broken. And nobody was going to argue about it because the president had spoken. And when the president speaks, you listen. Her name was Sarah. She was 34 years old. She had never sat on a motorcycle. She had never ridden with an outlaw club. She had never been to a clubhouse except as a wife or a girlfriend or a support person. She was an emergency room doctor. She had gone to medical school. She had been in debt for 7 years after graduation. She had saved 7 lives in the past month alone. She had never committed a crime. She had never raised her voice. She had never broken a law except the one unspoken law: women do not belong in the club. But she had also pulled a man out of a burning car at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday in Sacramento, and that man had happened to be the president of the Hells Angels. And he had happened to be alone. And he had happened to be dying. And Sarah had jumped out of her car, and she had run toward the burning vehicle, and she had pulled him out with her own hands, and she had saved his life. 3 weeks before this moment, Marcus Webb was driving home from a meeting. He had been the president of the Sacramento chapter for 19 years. He was 58 years old. He had killed 3 men. He had been imprisoned twice. He had been patched into the club since he was 21 years old. He was a legend. He was someone that other men did not cross. He was someone that the entire motorcycle community respected and feared. He was also human. And on this particular Tuesday at 3 a.m, he was driving home, and his motorcycle was running rough. He'd been meaning to get it serviced, but the president of the Hells Angels is a busy man. He'd been meaning to fix the carburetor, but there had been club business. There had been meetings. There had been disputes that needed to be settled. The motorcycle failed at 70 miles per hour on the interstate. It didn't fail gently. It failed violently. The front tire went out, and Marcus went down. He went down hard, and his body tumbled across the asphalt, and he slid into a guardrail. The impact was specific. His right leg was crushed. His ribs were broken. His head hit the rail with enough force that he lost consciousness. He woke up 3 weeks later in County General Hospital, and the first face he saw was Sarah's. She had been driving home from a shift. She had seen the motorcycle fire before she saw Marcus. She had seen the flames, and instinct had told her to stop. Police instinct, doctor instinct, human instinct. Something had told her that stopping was more important than getting home. She had pulled over. She had run toward the fire. Marcus had been pinned under the bike. The heat was unbearable. The flames were consuming the motorcycle frame, and Marcus was conscious enough to know that he was going to die. He could feel the heat on his skin. He could smell the burning rubber. He could hear the sound of the fuel tank crackling. He thought, "This is how I die. On a Tuesday morning on a Sacramento highway, pinned under my motorcycle. Alone." And then Sarah had appeared. She had appeared like she had come from somewhere else. She had appeared with her bare hands and her emergency room strength, and she had lifted the motorcycle. She had actually lifted it. She had found the strength in her body that emergency rooms teach you. That specific strength that comes from adrenaline and the knowledge that someone is going to die if you don't move. She had lifted the motorcycle, and she had pulled Marcus out, and she had thrown her jacket over his body to extinguish the flames, and she had called for an ambulance. She had saved his life. Marcus had spent 3 weeks in the hospital. He had broken ribs, a crushed leg, severe burns on his left side. He had been told he would recover, but the recovery would be painful and slow. He had been told he would walk again, but not the way he used to walk. He had been told that he owed his life to the woman who had pulled him out of that fire. When he was conscious enough to understand, the president of the Hells Angels wanted to meet the woman who had saved him. Sarah was surprised when Marcus asked if he could see her. She was surprised when this large man, a man whose name she'd learned was Marcus Webb, a man whose background she'd quietly researched and learned that he was in a motorcycle club, a man whose injuries told a story she didn't need to fully understand, wanted to thank her. She came to his hospital room. She brought her charts. She brought her professional demeanor. She brought everything except the knowledge of who she was really talking to. Marcus told her the truth. He told her that he was in a motorcycle club. He told her that he had a violent past. He told her that most people who spent time with him ended up regretting it. He told her that her saving his life had put her in a unique position in his world. He told her that in motorcycle culture, you don't save someone without creating a debt. And debts could be complicated. But then he said something else. What you did, Marcus said, was the opposite of what I've spent my entire life doing. I've spent my life taking things. I've spent my life hurting people. I've spent my life being the worst version of myself, and you've spent 3 weeks making sure that I don't die. You saved me not because you owed me anything. You saved me because that's what you do. You see someone in danger, and you save them. That makes you more of a man than I'll ever be. Sarah didn't know what to say. She was just a doctor. She was just doing her job. But Marcus knew what he had done. He knew that he was a violent man, and he knew that Sarah was not. He knew that she had run toward danger, and he knew that most people run away from it. He knew that she had saved his life, and he knew that most people would not have. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus had visitors. Men came to the hospital. Men with tattoos and patches, and the specific bearing of people who were not doctors and nurses. These men sat with Marcus, and they talked about club business. They talked about territory and protection, and the kinds of things that motorcycle clubs talk about when they're making decisions. And Marcus told them the story of how he had almost died. He told them about the burning motorcycle. He told them about his body pinned under the frame. He told them about the moment when he knew death was coming. And then he told them about Sarah. He described her appearing in the darkness with nothing but her own strength. He described her lifting the motorcycle with her bare hands. He described her throwing her own jacket over his burning body. He described her saving his life, because that's what you do when someone is dying. The men listened. The men understood. In motorcycle culture, you don't save someone without creating something. You create an understanding. You create a debt. You create a bond. When Marcus was released from the hospital, he went directly to Sarah. He was walking with a cane. He would always walk with a cane now, but he was alive. He was alive because of her. I want to offer you something, Marcus said. In my world, when someone saves your life, you become connected to them. You become part of their world, or they become part of yours. I want you to come to the clubhouse. I want you to meet the people I ride with. I want you to understand what I'm asking. Sarah said no. She said she was a doctor. She said she didn't belong in a motorcycle club. She said she had saved him because he was a human being who was dying, not because she wanted to become part of his world. But Marcus was persistent. He came to the hospital. He came on her days off. He brought flowers and coffee and stories about his life. He told her about the men in the club. He told her about why they were bikers. He told her that most of them had nowhere else to belong. He told her that she had shown him something that he hadn't seen in 37 years of being a biker. She had shown him what kindness looked like. After 2 months, Sarah said yes. She said she would come to the clubhouse. Just once. Just to see it. Just to understand. The clubhouse was not what she expected. She expected violence. She expected danger. She expected men who were intimidating and crude, and exactly what the news had told her to expect from motorcycle clubs. Instead, she found men who were complicated. She found men who had code. She found men who protected each other. She found men who had built a family out of the rubble of their lives. And they treated her with a specific kind of respect. They didn't treat her like she was a woman who belonged in their space. They treated her like she was someone who had saved their president. They treated her like she was sacred. She came back to the clubhouse the next week. And the week after that. She started helping with injuries. She started understanding the code. She started understanding why these men chose to ride together. She started understanding that motorcycle culture was not what the news had told her. It was not violence for the sake of violence. It was loyalty. It was brotherhood. It was people understanding that they had to stand together because standing alone had nearly destroyed them. 1 month after she started coming to the clubhouse, Sarah was there when Marcus made his announcement. He had called a meeting. All the members who could attend had come. There were maybe 40 men there. They filled the main hall. They were drinking beer. They were talking about business. And then Marcus stood up and asked for silence. "There is something I need to say," Marcus said. 3 months ago, I was dying. I was burning. I was sure I was going to die alone on a highway in Sacramento. And then a woman I'd never met before ran toward the fire and pulled me out. She saved my life. She did it not because she owed me anything. She did it because that's what she does. That's who she is. He paused. He let the silence sit. In our world, when someone saves your life, they become part of your world. They become something other than what they were before. Sarah is a doctor. She is intelligent. She is brave. She is the kind of person that we should all aspire to be. And I have decided that she is one of us now. She is one of the Hells Angels. She is one of us. And nobody here is going to say otherwise. Do you understand me? The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of men understanding that a law had been broken. It was the silence of men comprehending that a woman, the first woman in the club's history, had been patched in. It was the silence of men deciding whether to accept it or fight it. And then the oldest member in the room, a man named Chester, who had been in the club for 31 years, stood up. He approached Sarah. He looked at her directly in the eyes, and he said, "Welcome, sister." The entire room erupted, not in anger, in acceptance, in understanding. One by one, men approached Sarah, and they welcomed her. They told her stories of Marcus. They told her that they'd heard what she'd done. They told her that anyone brave enough to run toward a burning fire was brave enough to be a biker. Sarah was given a patch. It was the first woman's patch the club had ever created. It didn't have her name. It had a symbol, a woman pulling fire. It had the words "One of Us." It had the Hells Angels' death head. It was official. It was real. She was officially a member of the motorcycle club. But Sarah didn't want to ride the same bikes as the men. She didn't want to attend the criminal activities that some of the club was involved in. She didn't want to abandon her career as a doctor. She wanted to be part of the club in a different way. She wanted to be the medic. She wanted to be the person that the bikers came to when they were hurt. She wanted to be the bridge between the motorcycle community and the hospital. She wanted to be the one who could help them without judgment. The club understood. They accepted her terms. Sarah became the official medical advisor for the Hells Angels Sacramento chapter. She treated injuries that the bikers couldn't explain to hospitals. She provided pain management for wounds that had come from violence. She became, in a very real sense, their doctor, their connection to the world outside the club, their proof that there were people who believed in them despite what they'd done. Other chapters heard about Sarah. They heard about the woman who had been patched in. They heard about the woman who ran toward a burning fire and pulled out the president. They heard about the woman who had become a doctor and then became a biker. The story spread across the motorcycle community. It became a legend. It became proof that a woman could be brave enough to belong. 5 years after Sarah was patched in, the club had grown. They had new members. They had established new chapters. But Sarah remained the only woman. She was the only one who had run toward danger. She was the only one who had proven herself not through violence, but through sacrifice. She moved into the clubhouse permanently. She set up a small medical clinic in one of the back rooms. She treated bikers from not just the Sacramento chapter, but from chapters across California. She became the most respected member of the club, not because she was tough, but because she was kind. Not because she could fight, but because she could heal. And the men of the Hells Angels Sacramento chapter protected her with a fierceness that was almost religious. They understood that Sarah was something different. She was not a property. She was not a support. She was not a woman in the club because she had married a member. She was a woman in the club because she had proven herself. She had proven that she deserved to be there. 10 years after the night she pulled Marcus out of the burning motorcycle, Sarah was still a member. Still the only woman. Still treating injuries. Still being a bridge between the motorcycle community and the world. Still living at the clubhouse. Still being called sister. Marcus was 58 years old when he announced that Sarah was one of them. He was 68 years old when he stepped down as president. His leg had never fully healed. He walked with a permanent limp. But he walked into his retirement knowing that he had done something that broke the rules. He had brought a woman into the club. He had acknowledged that kindness and bravery were more important than tradition. At his retirement ceremony, Marcus gave a speech. He talked about his life in the club. He talked about the men he'd ridden with. He talked about the violence and the loyalty and the brotherhood. And then he talked about Sarah. There is a thing that happens in motorcycle culture, Marcus said. We tell ourselves that we're hard, that we're tough, that kindness is weakness, that vulnerability is death, and I lived by those rules for 37 years. And then I almost died, and a woman, with no obligation to me, with no reason to help me, ran toward a burning fire and pulled me out. She pulled me out not because I was strong. She pulled me out because she was strong. She showed me that strength is not the opposite of kindness. Strength is the ability to be kind when the world is telling you to be hard. Sarah is the strongest member of this club because she understands that. The room was silent. Chester was there. He was very old now. He was crying. He had spent 31 years with Marcus in this club. He had seen violence. He had seen loyalty. He had seen brotherhood. And he had seen kindness change everything. Sarah is the most important member of this club, Marcus continued, because she reminds us that we're still human. She reminds us that we can still be good. She reminds us that the reason we created this club, to belong to something, to be part of a family, that reason is still true. And the only way that reason stays true is if we honor people like her. People who run toward danger. People who save lives. People who are willing to become one of us. After Marcus retired, Sarah was asked to join the leadership. The club had never had a female officer before. But they asked her, and Sarah said yes. She became the treasurer. She became the person who managed the club's legitimate business. She became the face of the club to the outside world. She became the living proof that motorcycle clubs were not just violence and crime. They were also loyalty and family, and people understanding that they needed each other. 15 years after the night of the fire, Sarah was still there. She was 49 years old. She still worked as an emergency room doctor during the day. She still treated bikers at the clubhouse at night. She still lived in the back room of the clubhouse. She still wore her patch with the woman pulling fire and the words, "One of us." And the men of the Hells Angels Sacramento chapter still protected her. Not because she needed protection, but because she had shown them what it meant to be strong. She had shown them what it meant to be brave. She had shown them what it meant to run toward danger when everyone else was running away. She had shown them that being part of something bigger than yourself was worth the sacrifice. That being one of us meant understanding that there were people worth dying for. That being one of us meant understanding that there were people worth living for. The silence in that clubhouse on the day Marcus made his announcement had been the sound of a community accepting something it had never accepted before. It had been the sound of men understanding that tradition could be broken if the breaking was done for the right reason. It had been the sound of a rule dying so that a woman could live as something she deserved to be, not a support, not a property, not a girlfriend, but a member, a sister, one of them. And when men talk about that moment, when they tell the story of the night Marcus announced that Sarah was one of them, they don't talk about the silence. They don't talk about the confusion or the uncertainty. They talk about what came after. They talk about Chester standing up. They talk about the entire room welcoming her. They talk about the moment when the club understood that strength is not about violence. Strength is about letting go of your rules when someone shows you a better way. That's the real silence. That's the silence of a community being healed by kindness. That's the silence of people understanding that they had been wrong about something fundamental. That's the silence of a motorcycle club learning that the strongest thing they could do was to say, yes, you are one of us. And nobody is going to argue.